So we are going over D643, Navigating Complex Problems, and we're going to go over both of the tasks. One of the things that happens to be a common revision for these tasks is that they don't align. So I think it works really well to be able to do both task 1 and task 2 in the same time period, just to make sure that whatever we're doing in task 1, those same details, the data, all of that is transferring to task 2 as well. Otherwise, it will get returned for task 2. Okay, well, this course is all about how to think, analyze, and respond when there is not one clear solution. So it's kind of thinking outside of the box. Here's what we want to go over, the quick snapshot of what the performance assessment scenario is. We'll go over it, but then I'm going to give you a separate example that we'll work through. So that way I'm not giving you the answers, but you'll be able to compare when you get to your homework. And then we'll go over an overview of task 1, an overview of task 2, and then what support is there in the course for you. So here is the scenario. Synthesor, I'm going to say that wrong probably the whole way through, is a manufacturing company. If you want to pull up task 1, we can read through this, but basically what the scenario talks about is that they have experienced a public health crisis, they have a community-wide quarantine. During this time, only essential workers were allowed to work outside their homes. Now the company is returning to pre-quarantine conditions, and some employees are unhappy about returning back to work, and so they're pushing back. So the situation is intentionally complex. It involves many different people, types of people, uncertainty, a lot of different perspectives. And so there is not a single right answer with this. The objectives for task 1 is to develop a problem statement. We're going to talk about how to make that very clear, examine the scope of the problem, what fits within the parameters of that problem, what is outside of the scope that you don't need to solve for, and then diagnose the problem using evidence. We're going to look at what data you have, and then conduct a 5 whys analysis, which is talked about in your course material. There is a template for task 1. So make sure that you're scrolling down to the bottom of task 1 where those supporting documents are at the bottom. And so there's the links right there to show you. But when you go to the task overview, just scroll all the way down to the bottom. This is another reason that sometimes things get returned, is because it wasn't put on the template. So that's kind of a simple thing. And then when you're writing your problem statement, remember these 3 key things. Start with the context, clearly define the problem, and then keep it very concise and focused. Just like a lot of other tasks that you have probably done, if it's short, if it's concise, that's what they're looking for. They're not looking for paragraphs and paragraphs of information. A strong problem statement explains what is happening and why it matters without assigning blame or jumping to solutions. So that's a key thing too. When you write that problem statement, you are just explaining what is happening, why it matters. And don't jump to the solution part of it yet, because that will be coming. Okay, so we're going to use a different example so that we can kind of work through what the task is asking you to do without actually getting into that specific example that they give you. So we're going to talk about this ice cream situation. The problem statement that we have here for the example is, I installed ice cream machines in our office to provide all-you-can-eat ice cream for my employees. I don't know if they are utilizing the service and if it is worth the investment. So there's the problem. It's very simple. It explains what the situation is, the uncertainty, why the issue needs further analysis, but it does not propose a fix or a solution. So this is what you want to kind of model yours after. Out of scope. So anything that is not included in the boundaries or responsibilities of your problem statement. So if you can define what is outside of that you don't have to solve for, it helps you narrow what you actually need to solve for. So this is kind of a key skill in complex problem solving, is to understand the limits of the problem. This can be a little bit confusing, so I want to just spend a minute here. So out of the scope, something that trips students up a lot, not just in this course, but in real world problem solving too. When we talk about out of scope, we're talking about issues that may be related to the situation, but they're not part of the specific problem that you're analyzing in task 1. So in complex environments, there's always multiple things happening at once. So your job is, in task 1, draw a clear boundary around the problem that you're focusing on. So think of it this way. If everything is in scope, then nothing is clearly defined. So if you identify what is outside of the scope, you're demonstrating discipline, focus, and maturity, and this is what the evaluators are looking for. So, for example, in the scenario in your task, there may be issues related. We were talking about how they're forcing the employees to come back to the office and they're having some pushback. So there may be issues related to long-term facility costs, supply chain challenges, regional economic impacts. All of those things may exist, but they're not part of your specific problem. They're kind of outside of that scope. They're not things that you're going to be solving for, because all they want you to focus on is just the employee response to the return to work. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Next one. So here's an example, because we're using the ice cream machine example. So going back to that, the cost to maintain the ice cream machines and purchase the ice cream has increased due to recent tariffs. So basically it's like a so what, right? Because that's not what we're trying to solve for. We're trying to see, are employees actually even using this service? So the employer they're providing this all you can eat ice cream. They're wondering, does anybody care? Are they taking part in this? So besides the fact that this has increased, the cost of it has increased to the employer, which obviously is going to influence their decision a little bit, but that's not what we're solving for. So that's outside of the scope. Okay, then data. Task 1 requires you to use data to support your analysis. You can use quantitative. Quantitative data is something that can be measured, so specific numbers. Qualitative data can also be used. That could be people's perceptions or surveys that you're going to take. So, and that's one of the examples, is an employee satisfaction survey. And then contextual. So you can reference other data from the scenario as well. So they give you a lot of information in that scenario. Using data points. When you get to A3, so A1 is that problem statement, which we already talked about. A3 is where you put in the data. And so you're using that to support your problem statement. When you get to A3C, you're talking about why that data point is relevant. And so there's just some little examples to kind of boost that. So we've got 28% of employees have used it in the last 3 months. The results from the survey indicate that only 22% of employees identified free ice cream as a meaningful or motivating workplace benefit. So we're taking that data point and we're asking, why is this relevant? So the percentage of employees utilizing the ice cream machine once per week dropped by 7% from March to April, which could indicate that employees are less interested in this benefit. So if you can just take a look at how everything is relevant and flows from A1 to A3 to A3C, everything is aligned. That's what the evaluators are looking for, is that everything follows that logical sequence. Okay, so we're going to dive into this ice cream scenario. If you have that task overview in front of you, A3A. This is what it says in your task overview. Identify one key issue for each stakeholder listed on the problem analysis template. Okay, so we are going to focus on these 3 different stakeholders: the CEO, the employees, and then the facility, the operations team. So here's the issue for each of them. The CEO, the executive team, does not have clear data indicating whether the ice cream machines are delivering value or positively influencing employee satisfaction, making it difficult to assess return on investment. Then we look at it from the employee's point of view. Employees may be unaware of the ice cream benefit, may not find it meaningful, or may not feel encouraged to use it during the workday. And then we look at the operations team. Resources are being allocated to maintain the ice cream machines without clear evidence that the service is being used or valued. So you want to put yourself in each of those stakeholders' shoes and see what would be their viewpoint when you get to your scenario in task 1. Okay, so then we've got identify the 3 data points from the scenario. We're going to use this hypothetical employee satisfaction survey and tie it back to that problem statement. So we want 3. Make sure that you're using 3. The first one, the company spent $18,000 annually to install, stock, and maintain the ice cream machines across the office. Usage logs show that only 28% of employees have used the ice cream machines at least once in the past 3 months. And then results from the employee satisfaction survey indicate that only 22% of employees identified free ice cream as a meaningful or motivating workplace benefit. So you have this data in your scenario in task 1. So just pull out 3 data points that support your problem statement. Okay, so now we want to talk about why is it relevant. So when we get to A3C, we need to talk about how each data point is relevant to the problem statement. So again, make sure everything's aligning so that everything is addressing that problem statement, and also make sure that you are talking about each one of those stakeholders or the data points. So we talked about one of the data points was the annual cost of $18,000. So why is this relevant? This data point quantifies the financial investment associated with the ice cream machines, reinforcing the importance of evaluating whether the benefit is delivering sufficient value to justify the ongoing expense. So you can see we took the data point, and then why does it matter? Next one, 28% employee utilization rate. This data point provides measurable evidence of a limited employee engagement with the ice cream machines, directly contributing to leadership's uncertainty about whether the benefit is being utilized. And then 22% perceived value rating. This data point demonstrates that a majority of the employees do not view the ice cream machines as a significant contributor to job satisfaction, suggesting a potential mismatch between leadership assumptions and employee preferences. So again, you'll see that we're not solving anything yet. All we're doing is just defining what the problem is and backing it up with the data. Okay. Then we move on to the root cause analysis, and we use the 5 whys. So when you're going through your course material, you'll get to that section about using the 5 whys. And so we ask the questions: who, what, when, where, those questions that have specific answers that you can find. But then we ask the why. So all of those kind of lead us to that root cause. And again, it must support the problem statement. So make sure that it's all aligning. Okay, so here's what this looks like. 5 whys analysis practice. We've got this problem statement that we've talked about. Using the 5 whys analysis, what is the root cause? So now we're trying to think about what is causing this issue. Again, we're not quite yet solving it, but we're asking, where is this coming from? And then how was the 5 whys analysis effective in determining the root cause? So we're answering both of those questions. So here's what this looks like. All right, so we're on A4 now, the 5 whys analysis. Here's the questions that we decided to use. Why is leadership unsure if the ice cream machines are worth the investment? It's one of the questions. And then you can answer it: because they do not know whether employees are using the machines or valuing the benefit. The next question: why does leadership not know whether employees are using the machines? Maybe because there's no system in place to track usage or gather the employee feedback about the benefit. Next question, why is there no system to track usage or feedback? So we're digging in a little deeper with each one. Because the ice cream machines were implemented as a perk without a defined evaluation or measurement plan. Then we ask more. So it's like, if you have kids and they just keep asking why, and you just keep going deeper. So why was the perk implemented without a measurement plan? Because leadership assumed that offering free ice cream would automatically increase employee satisfaction. Why did they assume that the perk would increase satisfaction without evaluation? Because employees' needs and preferences were not fully assessed prior to implementing the benefit. So we've really dug down with each of these whys, and as we're just continuing to ask those questions and maybe got to the root. Maybe employee needs and preferences were not fully assessed before management thought this was going to be a great thing, and maybe the employees don't really care. Okay, so A4, here's what they ask on A. Identify one root cause of the problem. So here's what we're going to come away with, all of those 5 whys. The root cause of the problem is the absence of a structured approach to evaluating employee benefits, including gathering feedback and measuring utilization, which prevents leadership from assessing the effectiveness of the ice cream initiative. We took all of those 5 questions and put it into what that one root cause was. And then B of that same question on your task overview, explain how the 5 whys analysis was effective in determining the root cause of the problem statement. Suggested length 2 to 3 sentences can be a short answer. So here's what we came up with this example. The 5 whys analysis was effective because it moved beyond that surface issue of ice cream usage and revealed a deeper gap in how employee satisfaction initiatives are evaluated. By identifying the lack of assessment and feedback mechanisms, the analysis clarifies why leadership is unable to determine the value of the investment. So we're still talking about what that problem statement was from the very beginning to make sure that it all continues to flow from that. All right, so for task 2, so you've finished task 1, you've got all of that data, you've figured out the root cause, you've got your problem statement. You're going to keep all of that information to work on task 2. Don't start over, because if you shift your focus, it's going to get returned. They want task 2 to reflect what you did in task 1. Also, you might notice this note, task 1 must be passed before starting task 2. That is not our common practice. If you want to jump ahead into task 2 while that first one's being evaluated, usually you can. For this one, you cannot. You have to wait until you pass task 1 before you submit task 2. Okay, so here's what you need. You need the task scenario. You need the problem analysis template that you used in task 1. You're going to use that same template. You need your course content, and there's a PowerPoint template at the bottom of task 2. So again, scroll all the way down to the bottom, download that PowerPoint, and we're actually going to go through that PowerPoint template, what that would look like. All right, task 2 objectives, develop an actionable plan. Now you're solving it, and it needs to have action steps attached to it to address this complex problem. Effectively communicate recommended solutions with stakeholders. So you decide what the solution is, and you're going to effectively communicate, decide how that communication would happen. All right, so here is the scenario from your task. You're this consultant who just completed your analysis on this complex problem. I'm not even going to try to say because I always say it wrong. You are going to now provide a solution, action steps, and present your findings. But we're going to go back to the ice cream example because I don't want to give you the answers. So part A, the solution. How are you going to solve the problem from task 1? So Here's A. This is what your task overview asks you to do. Recommend a solution from the task 1 analysis that addresses the problem statement and aligns to the scenario. That's why it's so important to make sure that alignment is all the way through or it will be returned. So here's how we could answer this. The recommended solution is to implement a structured evaluation approach for the ice cream benefit by measuring employee utilization and gathering employee feedback to determine whether the initiative effectively supports employee satisfaction and justifies the financial investment. And then the second part of this is the solution aligns with the scenario by directly addressing leadership's uncertainty about usage and value without prematurely removing or replacing the benefit. We're analyzing whether it's important to the employees or not and whether it's worth the investment to keep going. Part B, these are the action steps. What are you going to do to solve this problem? And then justification. How will these steps solve the problem? So there's 2 parts to part B. So here's what this looks like. When you get to section B, create an action plan in which you do the following. Identify 3 action plan steps needed to implement the solution in part A. 3, make sure that it's 3 because that's another thing that gets missed sometimes. And so we've talked about what our solution is going to be. We're going to gather employee feedback and determine whether this was worth it. So here's our action plans. Number 1, we're going to implement a system to track ice cream machine utilization. They didn't even know how much it was being used. So now we're going to install basic usage tracking such as machine counters or weekly inventory monitoring to quantify how frequently employees use the ice cream machines. We'll have data to look at. Number 2, we're going to conduct a targeted employee feedback survey. So this is the first one is your quantifiable data numbers. Second one is qualitative data. We're going to see what people have to say about it. Distribute a short survey to assess employee awareness of the ice cream benefit, perceived value, and preferences regarding workplace perks. And then third, we're going to review and evaluate the data that we collect to inform the next steps. So we're going to analyze the utilization data and survey results to determine whether the ice cream machines are meeting employee needs and aligning with organizational goals. So here's our action plan with 3 steps. Now the second part of B is to explain, we're going to justify why these steps are important. So it says on there, explain why the 3 action plan steps are appropriate for the problem statement. So this is your rationale behind it. Number 1, tracking utilization is appropriate because the problem statement identifies a lack of visibility into whether employees are using the ice cream machines. Quantifiable usage data directly addresses this gap and supports informed decision making. So we're pointing back to the problem statement still and telling why we're going to start tracking. Number 2, gathering employee feedback is appropriate because employee satisfaction initiatives are the most effective when aligned with employee preferences. We don't want to give them a perk that they don't care about, right? So this step helps leadership understand why utilization may be low and whether the benefit resonates with the employees. And then third, evaluating the data. Why do we want to do that? Because leadership's uncertainty stems from not knowing whether the investment is worthwhile. Reviewing both usage and perception data enables leaders to assess value and adapt future actions based on evidence rather than assumptions. I think that complex problems, they exist, in our personal lives too, all of the time. And so we probably go through these steps in our head pretty quickly. We can assess it pretty quickly in our heads and not even realize that we're actually going through all of these steps. However, having kind of this framework helps, I think, when you get into a business situation where things can be more complex, than what they might be in your personal life, or whether there are more stakeholders involved in trying to figure out how they're all affected by it. So when you have that framework, even though it made sense to you personally, you can follow these steps then in a professional setting. Okay, so part C is when you start working on your PowerPoint presentation. So you're going to download that template. You can copy relevant answers from task 1, and I'm going to show you that. So actually the PowerPoint template does not take that long to complete because you're going to be pulling exactly answers. They're fine with you copying and pasting. And then you can edit the template, look and feel, but keep the WGU branding. So here's what this PowerPoint template looks like. The slide 1 has you put in the title, put in whatever you want. And then slide 2 is your problem statement. So go back to task 1, A1. What is written here in red is my notes to you, where to find this information. So this isn't actually on your task overview, but this is from task 1, A1, the problem statement. Go back, reporting data. So go back to task 1, A3B. Pull those 3 data points that you had there. Again, everything aligns. You're going back to task 1. Solution. Recommend a solution from task 1 analysis that addresses the problem statement and aligns to the scenario. And we talked about this. So here was our recommended solution. That we're going to do this tracking system, and we're also going to do the employee feedback survey. Here are the steps. So now we broke it down into those 3 steps, and we already went over these answers, but you're going to put them into this PowerPoint. You'll see on your task overview that they list it A, B, and C. A and B, you're answering on the template that was from task 1. C, you're just copying your answers and putting this in the slide. So you're kind of duplicating your work, but you're not multiplying it, if that makes sense. You're copying and pasting, and they're going to look to see that, you know, if everything matches what you had said before. So this is where you put your action plan steps that you have already come up with. Rationale. Now, this slide is not in your PowerPoint template. You can either, I'm going to go back, in this action plan steps, you can put in everything on this slide if you want. I reached out to the instructor and said, would you recommend adding another slide to do the rationale? And they said, yeah, that's totally fine too if you want to add. I think there's a lot of information, so probably just copying that last slide, pasting it, and then changing the text on it to explain the rationale probably is a good way to do that. So you're going to explain why those 3 steps are appropriate for the problem statement. Again, you've already answered this, so you're just copying and pasting this. So you're not coming up with anything new. Just some tips. So that's task 1 and task 2. And hopefully that made it clear of what you're looking for. Your course material, you know, is going to be where you're going to go find your 5 whys. And when you're talking about things that are out of scope and within scope, you know, all of that is in your course material. Use the templates. That's a big one. Easy to miss sometimes. So you've got 2 templates that you're using, one from task 1 that you will also use in task 2, and then the PowerPoint template. Use the task rubrics. Look and make sure that you're meeting what they're looking for. Remember that task 1 must be completed and passed before you can submit task 2. There's also some supplemental resource videos in your course material. There are cohorts that the instructor offers, so there's a lot of additional resources that you can use. Also your course learning community. Within your course material, there's some great employer perspective videos and some LinkedIn learning that have links within that course material that you can go to. Some really good information, very interesting. And then, of course, those assessments that they have at the end of every section, just to make sure that you're getting what you need out of it. This says the same thing, but just kind of laid out a little bit different. Your course support is that course learning community. So you're going to be in D643 in Microsoft Teams in that channel. There's live events like tonight. There's cohorts from the instructors. There's some open office and study hall hours. All of that is on that cohort information. And then, of course, you can always reach out to your mentor or to your instructor for more support than academic support in general. Just to remind you that we do have Academic Coaching Center, we have the Career and Professional Development Center, and we have Wellbeing. Thank you so much for joining tonight for D643 Task 1 and Task 2 overview. I hope that this was helpful as we went through things. If you have any more questions about any of the things that we went over tonight, you can reach out to your program mentor, you can reach out to your instructor for your course, or you can email this group email for Power Skills, and the first person that's available will get back to you. Please keep in mind all of the course resources that you have available as well. And remember that the most important things for these two tasks is that they align from start to finish and that you remember to use the templates. Thank you again. I really appreciate your time, and have a good night. Thanks. Bye.